Hello, it's Jennie and Laurie of AstroPath, which is a combination of Astrolore and Hidden Path Astrology. And we're here today to do one of our MoonLore videos. And today we're going to be talking about the full moon, which occurs. When is it happening, Jennie?
It is February 16th. I think it's 11:56 a.m. Eastern.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where exactly does this full moon fall?
This full moon is in Leo because the sun is in Aquarius. So when the moon is opposite of the sun, as it is during every full moon, it's in the opposite sign, which is
Okay.
Leo.
All right. So the full moon, we're going to try to keep this video really simple today and mostly focus on where it is landing in your own chart. What you want to think about, though, is that the full moon is the illumination of the cycle that began 2 weeks ago at the new moon, which occurred on January 31st, February 1st, depending on what time zone you live in. So whatever seed of intention you planted at that new moon, look now for a bit of an illumination on that cycle. And then if you want to look back for the bigger cycle, you want to think about what seed was planted at the Leo new moon on August 8th, 2021. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what else do you want to say specifically about this particular new moon, full moon, Jennie? And do you want to open up the chart of this full moon?
We could do that. Yeah, I think that I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about in this conversation is just about the polarities, and that's something we always talk about in the full moon. And it's this idea that there's these two polar opposite forces as represented by astrology at these times, and they're particularly interesting times. I mean, on the planet Earth level, the tides are higher during both full moons and actually new moons. So there is an actual effect on the Earth with having the sun and the moon in the totally opposite positions. So that's cool. I always like stuff like that. But psychologically, this refers to, I don't know, some of the things in like the human condition, like the paradoxes that we all face, those times in our lives that we can all think about when you're at a crossroads and you kind of think there's only two directions. So that's what's so cool about the full moons is we work with these opposite energies. So in this case, I'm going to pop this open now. Actually, no, I'm not because I'm not quite ready for that. But in this case, we're looking at Leo being opposite from Aquarius. So now I almost have the chart. And here we go. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Okay. So this is our chart, and it's kind of a funky chart because you can see that the moon is completely opposite from the sun, as this is what the whole point of this video is we're talking about. And there's not a whole lot else. I mean, look at that moon. It's all by itself at the bottom of this particular chart.
Right.
And there really aren't any other aspects to any other planets in this chart for the moon.
Like yeah, I mean, if you stretch the orb, you could bring Saturn in, but that's a stretch. I mean, if you're thinking about sign-based aspects, you could look at other things. But basically, yeah, this is just this illumination is what's going on, right?
Yeah, and you can't even look to rulerships, which is something we do, where you think about what planet rules what sign, because the sun rules Leo. So even if you think, moon's in Leo, let's see what its ruler's doing. Well, we're back at the sun in Aquarius, so there's not a whole lot, there's not a whole lot of places to kind of go looking for meaning. It really is bringing in this meaning of the polarity of Leo and Aquarius functioning together. So I guess we should talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, thinking about the Leo, let's start with Leo because that's where the moon is and that's what we're looking at when we go out and see the full moon. That's what's being illuminated by the sun. And Leo is the fixed fire sign. You often talk about it as like the hearth fire. It is the energy. I think of Leo on the most positive side of Leo. It is really about generosity and open-heartedness and warmth. You
Mhm.
know, it's ruled by the sun. The warmth of the sun is really baked into the sign of Leo.
Mhm. Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I would say it has an air of celebration, the
Oh,
Leo moon.
yes.
And, and it's
Yes.
kind of like for us here in the Northern Hemisphere, it's like the middle of winter. And it's like just what you need is this kind of bonfire of the Leo moon, and think about gathering together with people and celebrating that one way
Yeah.
or another. So, yeah. And Leo's also very playful. So,
Yeah.
under a Leo moon, you might think about just gathering with a group of friends outdoors and being around this bonfire. Like, that's actually a really good image for it, the playfulness, the fun, the conversations that might be happening.
Oh, I'm going to make a plan.
Yeah. All right. What are you going to do?
I'm going to have a bonfire. Absolutely.
So that's a great way to spend this. Um, let's see. I guess it from a psychological point of view, the need of the Leo moon might be to be seen, to be recognized, to be kind of welcomed with open arms. And
Mhm.
the at the other end of it, when it's not getting those needs met,
Mm,
we're going to see a lot more things like arrogance or a really deep insecurity
yeah. Yeah.
about not being loved, not being seen. And that's
Yeah.
the fragility of a Leo moon in a natal chart.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the first professional astrologer I ever talked to when I was very, very young. She talked about Leo. You know, Leo has the reputation on the more negative side of the arrogance and, yeah, wanting all the attention for the self. And she talked about it being like that, being arrogant and needing all that kind of attention because of all the signs. There was such a deep insecurity and such a sense of not being seen.
Mm-hmm.
So that Leo just needs to be seen so much that it can go in those negative directions of arrogance. And in the more enlightened space, it can get into that generosity and warmth and all that warmth of Leo.
Nice. Well said.
Yeah.
Um, so how is it opposite from Aquarius, you might be asking? I would say the first thing I think of is just that Aquarius is thinking much more about the collective and groups and taking it much more to kind of, well, the airspace. It's a fixed air sign. So it's taking it to this more cerebral, inventive, innovative space. So it can be very humanitarianly minded, which is a little bit opposite or could work well with the Leo moon, because the Leo kind of brings the personal and the Aquarius brings this more collective, visionary view.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it really does. The idea of a gathering around a fire is very potent with this because yeah, the Aquarius does want the intellectual connection, the innovation of gathering with others, and the Leo wants the personal celebration. So you can bring these two together and have a great time. You know,
Yeah.
the opposition, people tend to think of the opposition as a pull, a difficulty and a pull. And it certainly can create that, but it also, you know, there's such a understanding of each other. It's like with a polarity and opposition, it's like two sides to the same coin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah,
fire and air. I mean, Leo's a fire sign, Aquarius is an air sign. I mean, just think about fire and air and
right,
your fireplace. Like if you blow on the fire, it
right.
lights up.
Yeah,
So there is a sense of them working well together,
yeah.
as well as
Without
just,
air, the fire is just going to be smothered. It's not going to burn. The
yeah.
air adds what it needs to really burn.
Yeah. So, on a personal level, if they're working in balance together, it can imply somebody who's very personally engaging, but also has this great humanitarian view and is not all just about themselves. Like they're thinking about bringing in the other and raising consciousness for other people and shining a light of generosity to help bring up the collective in a much more progressive way.
Yeah.
And I was writing about this, I was kind of thinking about, in a way, Aquarius and Leo, when they're nicely balanced, kind of symbolizes democracy, where you
Mm.
have true leadership at the top, confident, gregarious leadership that's warm, that's connected, that's friendly, that understands, the great
Generous.
group. Yeah, and the generosity. And that really uplifts and empowers the group, and a sense of egalitarianism and progressive causes, and just that
That's
we
beautiful.
all get lifted together, so I think that's kind of what I was thinking of. And you can use that same analogy to look at it in its worst form, which would be a demagogue or a dictator who's just all in it for himself, fanning those flames of everybody look at me and how great I am, and meanwhile forgetting all about the collective, forgetting all about the sense of justice. And then that Aquarius air sign just becomes completely disconnected from the needs of the group. So it's a little bit of a mirror for some of our politics that we've seen in the last few years. So and continue to see. But anyway, that's another conversation.
Yeah, well, that's the great thing of watching the planets in time as they move and shift. People tend to think, oh, this is happening because the planets are doing this, and it's a reflection. So we see the reflections.
Nice, Laurie. That's great. Yeah. Should we talk about a couple other things in this chart? Yeah. Okay.
So that's the other thing we wanted to talk about, is the fact that at this full moon, Venus and Mars are conjunct in the mid degrees of Capricorn. Mars and Venus, when they come together, that is it. It's the beginning of a cycle between them. And you think about Venus as the principle of beauty and love, our values, Mars as the principle of assertiveness and aggression, and you bring those together. I always think, Mars is giving energy to Venus, and Venus is kind of softening Mars.
Nice.
So, you can think about that, a beginning process in the area of your chart that holds Capricorn.
Nice. Yeah.
Most people think of these two coming together as relating to relationship, because these are two very relationship oriented planets.
Yeah. I also think about, if you think about Venus as being your kind of your value system, that this is a time to put your values into action. This is a time when those two things are closely aligned. So what is inside of you is something you're able to put out into the world by taking action. And in Capricorn, we're serious. So seriousness. So it's kind of like, what are those values that you've had to dig into during the Venus retrograde period?
That's it.
And that was basically the end of December, and into all the way through January. So real time to reevaluate our value system.
That's perfect, Jenny, because that's really what this is. Venus is still, it's not out of its shadow yet, but it's moving forward. We've been through this really difficult Venus retrograde and evaluating our values, and now is the time to take action on the process that you've been through of evaluating. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. And
that's great.
Venus, we tend to think about togetherness and bringing things together. And Mars, we think about the opposite, time to separate. And those two principles together make powerful relationships, because we all need space in our relationships, and we all need together in our relationships. And without both of those things, you might have a struggle. You have something going on. And so you might need to think about which end of those. Do you need more closeness in your partnerships and your friendships? Do you need more separation? And it's just a natural push and pull that we've got to find balance with.
That's really, on a personal level, for me, this is a very powerful piece. So I'm grateful for this conversation. This is really, it's really important.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to our more natal portion.
Okay, let's do that. And we're going to share this in a different way, and visually it might not be quite the way we would like it to be, but by next month we'll have it more straightened out, right?
All right.
But for now, we're going to look at, I'm going to open up this chart here, which shows us on February 16th with Aries Rising. So if you have Aries Rising, this is going to show you where that opposition is happening. It is happening. The sun is in your 11th house, and the moon is in your 5th house. So that's the polarity that is being considered.
Nice.
Yeah. So what would you say about that, Jennie?
Well, we want to think about the moon first. Where is this big, bright, full moon going to shine a light? And in this case, it's going to be in your house of creativity, the place where you give love, the place of risk taking. It can also represent children. So there's a lot of those sort of principles in there. So this is like, be big and bright and bold in how you give love.
Yeah. Simple as that, really, in a lot of ways. I love that polarity because it's really, it's the polarity between where we give love and where we receive love from the collective, from others. And yeah, that's beautiful. Expression of love. That's beautiful. Okay. Anything else before we move to the next one?
Well, maybe we should address a little bit more of the Aquarius. I don't know. Just a little note to say, and the sun is in your 11th house of groups. So, I mean, you said the receiving of love,
Right.
but this is also, so as you give that personal love, remember your community. There's a sense of a bigger purpose here in your personal giving of love.
Yeah, you can think of it as, there's love coming to you from the community that allows you to really see how to give, really bringing those together. How to give love comes from the love you receive.
Nice.
You can
Yeah,
think
it's a
of it in that way.
two-way street. Yeah, that's great,
Yeah.
Laurie.
So then those of you with Aries rising, that other piece that we talked about, let's just kind of note that is happening in your 10th house.
Okay. So that's just bringing together your value system in your workplace. The 10th house is career.
Right. So what during that Venus retrograde, what you have been working on around your value system in career or workplace now is a time of taking action with that. I mean, this is exact 16 degrees, 52 minutes. It's funny that at this full moon, that's exactly happening as well. Now I'm going to move this forward. Let's see if I can do this smoothly. We're going to move this forward to Taurus rising. Okay. So now if you have Taurus rising in your chart, the full moon is falling in your 4th house. The sun is in your 10th house. So the light is shining in home and family. So you really want to bring generosity home from your workplace. You can think about it just very simply that way.
Yeah. I mean, you can just think about, this is a central theme in life, right? Like the interplay between home and work life.
Right.
And it plays out for a number of different ways depending on what's going on in your life. But yeah, the two are connected. So it's kind of like when you're happy at home and home is like this core place for you to draw a lot of support from, it kind of frees you in your 10th house to be like, oh, I'm good there. So I'm going to be able to really show up to my workplace without that. We all know what it feels like to have problems at home and you go to work and it's just like, oh man, I can't concentrate. So it just really speaks to that connection between the two things.
Right. Yeah, really seeing that connection is the polarities are so powerful when you start realizing how they really need to work together. And at the full moon is such a clear time for that. So as well, we've got that Venus-Mars conjunction, if you have Taurus rising, is happening in your 9th house. So this is a time to take action on the shifting values that you've been really learning to understand your values around worldview.
Yeah. And so this might come in a way that something new has happened to you. You've learned from maybe somebody who's from a different place than wherever you live.
Yeah.
You've really been forced to kind of open your mind in a new way and have integrity around that and kind of be serious about what your study is of it.
Yeah. It can very much, this could very easily show up like you're really realizing that you value something that you don't know enough about. So Mars comes along and bumps into that Venus, and it's like it's time to take action on that learning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to enroll in that course,
Right.
that is going to open your mind and take you to a new place.
Yeah. It's time to contact the astrologer that you want to study with.
Right. Good point.
Good point, isn't it? Okay, so now I'm going to try to forward to Gemini rising here. Why is it? Oh, there we go. Okay, so this brings our full moon into the third house and the sun in the ninth. So that's opening up that polarity between the third house. It's really about communication, our day-to-day processing of information. So this is a time to really shine a light on that and be generous with your conversations, maybe.
Yeah.
And the information of what you're communicating is coming from, again, your worldview.
Mhm. Yeah, I think this brings in, sometimes you can also look at the third house as a place of siblings, but also
Mhm.
those really close friends who are like siblings, those
Yeah.
people you talk to and rely on the day to day. So this is something about really sharing with them how much you appreciate that closeness you have, and then taking that warmth and sort of opening it up into this idea of more like sisterhood or brotherhood, like with the larger group.
Oh, I
So it's
love
kind of
that,
bringing it
Jenny.
personal to that opening. So
Huh, that's very nice. I like that. Okay, and at the same time, that
feeling it.
Venus Mars is happening in the eighth house. So this is a time where, during the Venus retrograde, you've probably been grappling with your abilities and your values of how to navigate other people's issues.
Yeah.
Other people's deep issues that are unlike your own. So this is a time to, in some way, take action on that.
Mm.
Hmm.
This could be a grappling of time with somebody else's money. I mean, either something you're
Right.
managing at work, or maybe some sort of inheritance, or something going on that's kind of a little bit below the surface. That, and you know what, the kinds of issues money can bring up between people.
Right.
So something about those topics.
Right. Or it could also have something to do with sexual relationships as well.
Mm-hmm.
The eighth house is really where we grapple with other people's values on deep issues that people are very sensitive around. Sex and death, other people's money, those are some of the core places that people carry a lot of baggage around those things. So that's where you're needing to take action on a shift in your values.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love doing it this way, and having that happening at the same time as this full moon it makes it really potent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to move to, let's just see if we can get this here. Cancer rising. I should have this set so it moves a little quicker, but there we have it. This brings our full moon into the second house and the sun itself in the eighth.
Mm-hmm.
So that generous full moon in the second house being the area of resources, and self-worth, self-love,
Mm-hmm.
money, and resources. That's really what that house is about. I think, with the Leo moon there's a lot about being generous to yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah. Go out and buy yourself a gift.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking like grand gestures of generosity to
Yeah,
yourself, and for the resources that you have to offer, for the values that you have to offer, and it ties in really nicely with the polarity of the sun in Aquarius, because it takes you right to this place of, understanding other people's value, and maybe realizing that a lot of people are struggling and are sort of downtrodden right now. And it may be easy to kind of make judgments or those kinds of things. And instead, just recognizing that as you recognize your own value, you can recognize the value of other people around you, and that everybody's got a story. Be more curious instead.
That's beautiful. That's really nice. I like how you just brought those two together. Yeah, that polarity is very powerful. Your personal values, other people's personal values, and how you bring them together. The opposition here between the sun and moon makes that, illuminates the difference and the similarity. Two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And then we're going to, again, look at that combination. So where during the Venus retrograde, you've been really grappling with and reevaluating your values around personal, intimate partnerships, relationships with other people. Now is a time to take a serious action on that.
You got it. There's not really a whole lot to add about that, but I guess probably anyone with this, like me, you've just had to really think deeply about what are your value systems in your relationship. So
right. And just, to be clear, that seventh house, people tend to, a lot of people tend to think that's your spouse or your romantic partner. And yes, it is, but it's not, it doesn't stop there. The seventh house is all of the relationships that you have that are really intimate and personal, one-on-one relationships. It can be a business partner. It can be a really close, intimate friendship. So those are the places that you've been evaluating how you want them maybe to be different. And Mars is encouraging you to take some action to bring that forth.
Yeah. And it can include the short term, right? Like it can be like that client coach relationship or something like that. Even if it's only an hour, for that hour, it's a seventh house topic. So it can play into some of those things too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you have to realize too, if you've got Cancer rising, Capricorn is always held in this seventh house. So whatever house this conjunction is happening in for you is always, always in your life an area of serious business. Nobody with a Cancer rising takes their intimate partnerships lightly. It's serious. It's a serious area of your life. Okay, we ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right.
Move on to
so
Libra
fun.
Rising.
Okay, let's move on to Leo Rising. And it's coming. There it is, but I forgot to erase those things. Let's clear that out. And now we're looking at the polarity between the moon falling in the first house. If you have Leo rising, the moon, it's in Leo, it's falling in your first house, and the sun is falling in your seventh house. So you're really looking at bringing this warmth and generosity again to yourself, but even more personal. This is a very personal full moon to you.
Yeah.
And you're seeing yourself reflected by a partner of some sort.
Yeah. And I mean, the first house also represents things like your self-image, your self-development. But I think with the Leo moon there, the symbol to take away is just, how can you just be wholeheartedly present? Like when you are, all of the moments of your life, when you're talking with somebody, especially when you're talking to somebody, because with that sun in Aquarius in the seventh house, there's going to be this really direct interaction of the way, what you just said, you mirror one another. So it really is just, can you clear away whatever's distracting you? Can you clear away ways that you want to just kind of be off somewhere else and just be fully rooted and present in a very celebratory way?
Yeah, because that's your rising sign is Leo. Your warmth and wholeheartedness needs to be right there on the surface of your personality. And this really offers you an opportunity to look at that and see clearly the importance of that. Huh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to look at the fact that if you've got Leo rising, that Venus-Mars conjunction is happening in your 6th house. You've been grappling with learning to more deeply understand your values around how you care for your body, self-care issues, dietary issues, exercise issues. Get out and listen to the trees sing. Wait.
We'll see you later, Laurie. Yeah. Yeah, nice. Yeah, I think that's great.
Okay. So yeah, that's what that's about. You've been grappling with that and now take some action. So now we're going to move on again. Let me erase those and we'll move on to the Virgo rising.
Nice.
Let's see here. Oh, look what happened though. This messed us up because all of a sudden it moved the moon into Virgo.
Oh yeah, because we're at the very end.
Yeah, next time we do this, we will do it in a better manner. So what I'm going to do right now, just because I don't want to stop our video, I'm going to hope you can all bear with me, and I'm going to just cross that out, and I'm going to draw a little moon over here, because this is where the moon is going to be, right?
Awesome.
The moon opposite the sun in Aquarius. That's where it's going to fall. If you have Virgo rising, the full moon, the full Leo moon is happening in your 12th house, opposed by the sun in your 6th house. Okay. So how do you see that? That one's too close to me. I can't see it.
Well, I think, we always talk about the 12th house as being a little tricky to talk about. I was thinking in context of it being the place of selfless service. This sort of a sacrifice element to the 12th house, and also for retreat. So I think that Leo moon is this warm inner light that's helping generate a sense of compassion and forgiveness, because those are some of the other components of the 12th house. It's really that place where you've got to be alone. You're wrestling with solitude. You're maybe wrestling with some suffering, but you also recognize in that moment the universality of that. And so really in the moment of your isolation is the moment when you connect. And the opposition to the sun in the 6th house really says, hey, let's bring this into your daily practice. Whether that's your exercise routine, or maybe you have a meditation practice, or maybe you go on a walk at lunch every day, or whatever. Bring that much bigger sense of ability to be compassionate into your day-to-day, your daily routine, and your workplace.
Okay. So that full moon is just illuminating that connection between your day-to-day routine existence and that inner solitude. There's a connection there. That's interesting. Okay, so those of us with Virgo rising have the Venus-Mars conjunction happening in the 5th house. So that tells us that during the time of the Venus retrograde, a lot of what was being grappled with was how we give love, and really reevaluating who we give love to, how we give love. And now it's time to take some action on what you've learned through this process.
So in your personal life, this could tie into, when you think of giving love as the main signification, this could tie into something to do with your relationships with your children. If you have children, this could also tie into relationships you have with a lover or even a past lover. So it shows you those are both places that you've given love at one point or another in your life. So that's what we're talking about. It could also be creative projects you're working on. That could be another thing.
Oh, yes. Yes.
So because that's 5th house is your creativity.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you ready to move on to Libra?
I am ready to move on. I made the moon disappear so it won't get in our way next time.
Like that.
Just like that, I made the moon go away. Okay, so now we're going to, let's see here.
Libra
Bear with me.
Rising.
Make
Yeah.
all that go away, and we're going to get ourselves to Libra Rising. So if you have Libra Rising, this full moon, the moon's going to be, wait, let's see, the sun is here. So the moon is going to be here in Leo in your 11th house, the opposition from the 11th to the 5th.
Yeah. Okay. So now with that moon in your 11th house, now we're back at that 11th house of community. And let's also think about collaboration. So this is where you really lean on and welcome the support of others. You let others support you, receive that love. And that's that, Leo moon, it maybe wants to be the one to like put out all the energy. And in this case, it's sort of saying, hey, like let some energy in and it'll make the bonfire grow even bigger. So it is that, that sense of, the collaborative spirit, letting other people lift you up. And the thing that you mentioned earlier with this polarity, which is that with the sun in the 5th house, it's really just letting you know that as you receive love, it also lets you give more love. Right. So it's this cycle. And having the sun in the 5th house is just highlighting being able to give love unconditionally without a sense of attachment.
I love that polarity. It's one of my favorite polarities, the 5th to the 11th, just that, that back and forth. And so many people struggle with one side or the other. And this really opens up a pathway of, okay, I can give love and receive it. Some people get stuck on one side and they know how to give love, but it's really hard to accept it. And some people, just the opposite, they can accept it, but they struggle to give it. So this really opens up a path there to see both sides if you've got Libra rising. And then to pull that into this connection here, the Venus-Mars conjunction is happening in your 4th house. And that suggests that, during that Venus retrograde, you were grappling with your own values around your family, around your home. And now you can take action on that. I could think of all kinds of funny things to say about how to take action on your values with home and family, but probably better left unsaid.
But also for those of you listening too, I mean, this could mean your tangible physical home, depending, like actually doing a renovation or something like that. Or it can mean much more esoteric, like your lineage, like this sort of questions around your ancestry. So it's a cool place to think about.
It might be time to get your DNA test, or it might be time to call the realtor, or I mean, there's so many different things that you may have been grappling with around your home and family and lineage. I feel like that 4th house it's your whole ancestral line. And it's also the home you come home to every day. So, these things happen on all kinds of different levels and layers.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make that all go away. And we will move on to the Scorpio rising.
Great. So Scorpio.
Okay. Now with Scorpio rising, the polarity is going to be from the 10th house where the moon is, even though it doesn't show up there, I'm going to make it there. Okay. So the Leo moon is in your 10th house, shining a light on how you show up in the outside world through career, vocation, reputation. So you really have the ability to shine a lot of warmth in that area. We talked about it in the other direction, didn't we? When we talked about Taurus rising. How do you see the difference in this direction?
The difference in this case, I think, is that Leo moon in the 10th house means something more like celebrate your colleagues in your workplace. Let people know in your workplace how much you appreciate them, how much that it's been great working with them, Laurie Farrington. But it really it puts the emphasis there, and then it lets you know that that warmth, that positive feeling you have at work, let it come home to roost with you. Bring that positive feeling back into the door with you, with your closest family members. So it's, again, working with that as a sort of a circuit of energy between your home life and your work life.
That's
And
beautiful.
in this case, it's focusing in on the workplace. So
that's beautiful. I love that. I love how you just said that. So yeah, that's the story. If you have Scorpio rising and the Venus Mars conjunction is happening in your third house. So that says that you've been grappling with your communication skills, perhaps during that Venus retrograde. You've been grappling maybe with issues around siblings or those closest kind of sibling type friends. Third house can also be neighbors. But so there's something that you've been trying to understand your own values around those things. This is a time to take action. Maybe it's time to put pen to paper and write that letter to your sibling that you need to write, or start a writing project of some sort.
I was also thinking my favorite things about the third house is it's the house of short trips. So this might be that you've decided you're going to ride your bike to work because your value system is, wow, I want to do something about using gas all the time, so it could be something as simple as that too.
And you're going to inspire your coworkers.
That's right.
I love that. That's beautiful.
That's how it works together.
That's just lovely. Okay. So now let's clear all that out and move on to Sagittarius rising.
That's right.
So now
we're going to have that full moon is going to be in your 9th house.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That looks good.
Full moon in your 9th house, the sun itself in your 3rd house. How are you looking at that, Jennie?
The 9th house is the house of travel and your worldview as well. And I know that traveling is difficult right now, but people are nonetheless doing it, for better or for worse. I just want to mention that. But this is a time to really embrace, again, those foreign cultures we mentioned to you, something that's foreign to you. Just trying something that is totally out of the box for you, like just a different way of doing things. And this helps you generously expand your worldview, let your view grow. And the sun in Aquarius down there kind of highlights this idea that with Sagittarius rising, you're kind of the perennial student. And that 3rd house is where you are a student and where you communicate lessons that you've learned. So it's sort of like, go get smart and then share it. Something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that 9th house is so interesting. I mean, we talk about it as worldview, and it encompasses so many things. It encompasses travel and education. It also religion in a lot of ways, not spirituality, but sort of religion. Just different ways that we understand our world. So there's a lot of, this is a time to celebrate that expansion of understanding.
Yeah.
By doing your day-to-day reading, you can bring that in. So then that puts our Venus Mars conjunction in the 2nd house. Where have you been reevaluating your values around how you spend money, how you uplift your own self-esteem, how that connection between self-esteem and money and resources is really interesting. And this may be a time that you want to reinvest your money in a way that supports your values in a stronger manner. You might want to make an appointment with your financial advisor and change things up a little bit if that's something you've been evaluating.
It's interesting because if you have Sagittarius rising this chart, chances are people think of you as being pretty warm and gregarious. But with Capricorn there in your 2nd house, there's a tough spot there about valuing yourself and valuing your own resources. And it's kind of got your work cut out for you a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's something else to consider. So
yeah, wherever Capricorn is not an easy place. It's always a place where we have a lot of effort, a lot of work we need to do. Okay, so let's clear that, and we're going to go looking for Capricorn Rising.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, there
Speaking of
she
three.
is. And now this brings the opposition. The moon will be in the 8th house
Oh yeah.
and the sun in the 2nd. So we're going to really bring our warmth to other people that we don't necessarily have the same values
Yeah.
as, right?
Yeah. I was thinking, I went a
Huh.
little, well, I guess maybe by our culture standards, dark on this one, but I was just thinking about the profound wisdom of mortality when I went here. And it was
Ooh.
kind of like that celebratory spirit, bringing it to, I don't know, the sense of mortality. But I also thought about, when you celebrate someone's life when they're gone, it's that kind of thing, like where you really celebrate what they brought to this life. So this is profound information here in this house. But it also sort of says, but let's not go too heavy with it. Keep it kind of light. Keep some playfulness. Be generous in your spirit as you're dealing with this part. And of course, with that Leo moon there, it's going to tie into the way you value yourself. With the Aquarius sun down there in the 2nd house is really bringing into that interplay of how you value yourself, how you value other people, and sometimes those moments of, oh wow, this isn't going to go on forever, can really bring some profound depth to these places.
It's interesting as you're talking about that. I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, bringing that energy of generosity. What does it take to bring generosity to other people's belief systems? Especially in our world right now, there's so much contentiousness between people. And this really suggests that if you've got Capricorn rising, you really, take your own values and hold that strong enough that you can bring an open state of generosity to others who think very differently than you, and the importance of being able to do that.
Yeah, and it's a really worthwhile conversation right now because we tend to think, I mean, how many times have you heard in the news, oh, we're so polarized right now? Well, and we're talking about polarities in this conversation. And so part of what we're saying here is it doesn't have to be, nor should it, but it should be either or. It's both and. And that is kind of what we're trying to work with. And that's where the paradox is, and that's where the wrestling is, and that's where the worthwhile pursuit and effort is to be made.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. We cannot, without the polarity, we're totally off balance. If everybody thinks the same, we're going to fall off a cliff. We need the balance of each other. And that's a difficult thing in our world right now. So for those of you with Capricorn rising, this Venus-Mars conjunction is happening in the 1st house. How have you been reevaluating and reconsidering the values of your own personality, of how you show up in the world, who you are, and what action is it time to take on that?
Yeah, it might be a way that you're really needing to change your image, and not necessarily in a superficial way at all, but just really realigning yourself with something that's important to you.
Right. And not in a superficial way, but a superficial way can indicate a deeper level.
Yeah, it's absolutely true.
If you maybe you need to go out and change your wardrobe in order to show yourself as you are now seeing yourself. If that makes sense, the way I said that.
Yeah, I think it
but
does.
so that's with Capricorn rising. So now let's move on to see the Aquarius rising. Okay, now if you have Aquarius rising, this full moon itself is going to be in your 7th house, opposite the sun in your 1st. And this polarity, I mean, this is self and this is the other. the partnership, partnerships. So you want to bring a lot of generosity to your closest intimates.
Yeah. I mean, this idea that when you're generous with other people, it fills you up. It's kind of basic. It's sort of lovely in its simplicity of that connection, and that they work together. They go hand in hand, and it's not a selfishness. It's much more than that.
Right. It's two sides of the same coin. It's, with the polarity, we need that polarity for balance.
Yeah. And
so,
yeah, I was just going to comment that with the Venus and Mars in the 12th house, this brings us to the level of this is a spiritual practice. This is something that is a profound value for you to be in this flow of self and other and how you mirror each other.
Right. So you've been really, with that Venus retrograde, you've been reevaluating your own unconscious understanding of life. What's going on under the surface. And now, what kind of action might you take to kind of move forward from that reevaluation? And that could be some real inner self study. Maybe you need a new therapist. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because quite a few people have asked me recently about meditations and been asking me to recommend meditation practices. Well, this full moon is a great time especially if you have this Aquarius Rising, to step that up or take action on it or whatever you decide. So
that's lovely. Okay, so now let's go on to Pisces Rising. All right. So if you have Pisces Rising, this full moon is going to fall in your 6th house opposite the sun in your 12th. Whoops, that's not going to be able to make. Okay, here we go. Do you like my little moon symbols?
That I'm fun to sketch it out. It's great.
I think they're lovely. So where are you shining your light now? You're shining your light in the 6th house. You're really bringing a lot of warmth to your own basic daily practices of your life. And you're doing that from the deep understanding that you have of your own inner needs.
Yeah. So I think too, with the 6th and the 12th house, you got to also think about your health and your wellness, because your 12th house can be illness. 6th house is the house of health or lack of health. So you do these routines, you do these things to take care of yourself. You eat well because it's part of keeping yourself healthy. And but this, I think with the Leo moon, they're like, these things can be fun. So it doesn't have to be like drudgery. This is things that you can tweak your habits a little bit. And I say aim for joy in these practices. So
if you need a new daily practice for your health, dance. With the moon in Leo there, turn on the music and dance.
Yeah, and it's also going to be some sort of stress relief. So that could be art. I mean, it doesn't have to be pumping iron, though that's great too. Yeah, I think that's a great release. But just thinking about that, and in that 12th house with the sun in Aquarius, it's recognizing how these simple practices, these simple acts that you're doing on the day-to-day kind of lessen your feelings of isolation. It kind of relieves suffering and brings in, I don't know, some fruits for your hard work that you're doing in the 6th house, fruits of your labors. So
okay, so with that, with Pisces rising, the Venus-Mars conjunction is happening in your 11th house, and you've probably been contemplating your own values around community, your values around how you receive from the larger community, and it's time to take action to move that process forward.
Yeah, and I mean, you can think about the 11th house too. So too is the place of social resources. So this is that two-way street on social resources. As your community lifts you up, then you're able to roll up your sleeves and contribute more in whatever way you see fit with community. So
yeah, very good.
All right.
Well, look at that, Jenny. We went through all 12, and I'm going to close this down, and there you have it. For any of you, contact us. Jennie is at hiddenpath.com and I am at astrolore.org. And if you've stayed with us this long, congratulations. We will be here again in 2 weeks to talk about the next new moon. Okay?
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jennie. Bye-bye.
Bye.